Hey guys, Super Nintendo here, and if you're like me, you have a partner who likes video games but would also like to play together. And while there are a ton of games that you can play against each other, they aren't always fun if one person wins and the other loses, and it's even worse if one partner is significantly better than the other. And that's why I compiled 5 of the best games to play together as a couple. So let's take a look. Number 5, Snipper Clips for the Nintendo Switch. Snipper Clips is a surprise hit. It kinda got hidden by the release of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This game used to cost $20, but now it's $30 because it's bundled with new DLC and it's physical. The premise of this game is simple. Cut your friends into a shape to solve the puzzle. This game requires coordination between you and your partner, which means that you need to communicate. Think you have great communication? Then you'll love Snipper Clips. And if you don't have great communication, well, you'll find out really quick with Snipper Clips. This game is adorable and there's no time limit, so you can take your time to solve the puzzles. It's a great game to have your partner introduced into gaming if they haven't been gaming before. They also added Pro Controller support since the Joy-Cons kinda got cramped. But if you don't have Pro Controllers, you can still use the Joy-Cons that came with the Nintendo Switch. Number 4, Bobble for the NES, a classic arcade game that's a staple on the Nintendo Entertainment System. 2 players can play at the same time and work together to fight monsters. This game has a soft soundtrack and is pretty easy for any newcomer, but it does offer a lot of challenge as time goes on. The first 10 levels are pretty easy, but then it starts getting difficult. There's no time limit, but if you leave one monster unbubbled after killing his friends, he will turn red and move super fast. Each level is mostly the same, but there are mechanics like slides that make them interesting every once in a while. There's not a lot to say about this game because it's so simple, and you can find it on the NES, NES Classic, and there's an actual arcade port on the PlayStation Network. Number 3, Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures for the Nintendo GameCube. This is the only multiplayer console Zelda, and this is the sequel to the Game Boy Advance version that was packaged with Link to the Past. In this game, you're working together, but you're also kind of competing. You collect rupees and other gems that are tallied up at the end of each stage, and it doesn't really matter, especially if you're playing with your partner. You need to communicate to each other on what you plan on doing next if there's a hurdle, and the only real drawback of this game is that it requires multiple Game Boy Advances and a Game Boy Advance cable to connect to your GameCube. The good news is that the cables can be found via third party for less than $5 a piece, but the Game Boys are another story. I have a Game Boy Advance and SP, and since the SP has a backlight, it's significantly better than the Game Boy Advance, but the SPs are more expensive. And right now there's no port of this game because of the requirements, which means that you can't just go out and pick up a copy of 4 Swords and start playing. Number 2, Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. I was debating on this or Super Mario Bros. 3, and I chose Super Mario World because if your partner gets in trouble, you can give them your lives out of your own count. In Super Mario World, you take turns on each level completing each world. It can be difficult if your partner really doesn't play video games because some of these levels are difficult, but it's still fun, and Yoshi eating red shells and spitting fire brings a smile to my face. If you were looking to introduce your partner to the Mario genre, this is a pretty good game, but I would also suggest the new Super Mario Bros. Series since it also has tools to help newcomers and it has simultaneous multiplayer. Super Mario World is available on the Super Nintendo Classic, or you can get the original SNES version, which shouldn't be too hard to find since it was a pack-in when the Super Nintendo first launched. And number 1, The Adventures of Cookie and Cream for the PlayStation 2. Now this is a truly unique game that I haven't seen anybody try to recreate since. You play as Cookie and Cream, 2 bunnies trying to recover the moon that was stolen before the Moon Festival. You have split screens, but the kicker here is that 2 characters need to play together in order to solve puzzles. There are buttons on one side that allow the player to progress on the other side, and this goes back and forth until you reach the end of the stage. And here's what really makes the game intimate. You can use one controller. The person on the left controls the left side of the controller, and the person on the right controls the right side. It's pretty neat and also allows this 2-player game to be played by one person. But if that's not your fancy, the game does allow you to use 2 controllers. This game does have a time limit, so you'll be playing some of these levels over and over again because if you get hit, you lose time, but it's still a really cool game to play with your partner. Of course, there are other games to play together as a team, such as Contra, Sunset Riders, Turtles in Time, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, but those aren't as forgiving as the ones that I mentioned. So what do you think? Are there some games that I missed? I'm always looking for games to play with my wife. Leave them down in the comments below, and if you like this video, hit that like button, and if you're new here, please subscribe. I'm Super Nintendo, and I'll see you next time.